Hi guys, welcome back to Settle in Spain. I'm Amanda. I'm here at our wonderful old cortijo in Andalusia, not far from Oria in the mountains. I'm joined on this journey by my husband Dave, our dog Otis, and our cats Chewy and Impy. Welcome back to those of you that have been following us for a while. This is the second then of some catch-up videos to get you up to date with where we are at the moment. This one, you're going to find out how this beautiful window, which I can't believe I sanded this down and painted it, how we got it fitted into the house. And there's going to be a lot more to do. So that was the first one that we learnt with by watching somebody else do it for us. There's also our journey to Italy. We had a holiday this year, which was the first holiday we'd had since before the pandemic. It's been about 5 years since we last had a holiday, so very much needed and lovely to have a trip away. I share some of that with you. But first, I'm going to show you how we converted our old VW T4 into a camper for the trip. The van conversion. This was done on a budget, both time-wise and financially. The first thing we did was pick up a rock and roll bed second-hand on Facebook Marketplace. We took those metal arms and legs off. We switched it round so that it opens up the other way into the van instead of into the back. And then David built a platform for it to sit on. The design of the platform had to have many different uses. It had to come above those wheel hubs there. It had to be high enough to fit the boxes underneath that we'd brought across from the UK with stuff in from his mother's house. And it also needed to be removed afterwards and when we don't want it as a camper. At this point, we were still over in the rental and we knew we needed to move house and we'd need to use the van to do it. It did take a lot of working out and planning, but David did build an amazing platform for the bed to fit on, and it worked perfectly. One other issue here was the time constraints of David having time off work to work on this, but also this was our only working vehicle at the time, as the Peugeot was still out of action with a broken engine. Those blue boxes fitted under there perfectly for storage, but we needed more than that. So we managed to pick these up, again relatively cheaply, in Leroy Merlin. I sanded them down, gave them a bit of oil and then decorated the fronts of them, and David fitted them into the side of the van. Another box, which I'll show you in a bit, was one that we'd picked up. It was an old kitchen unit, I think, and David added an extra section of wood to it so that it was the right height to put behind the two front seats, and it housed some longer pieces that we needed to store to do with the awning, but also perfectly positioned so that the bed, when it opened up, it acted as the base. Not only is that box good for storage, but also Otis loves standing on it, putting his head out the window. It's his favourite place in the van. We took the board out that was around the van and we put insulation in there, and then the board where it went back was covered with a sticky back plastic type of material that was cleanable. It meant it looked like wood, but it didn't have the weight of real wood. And the floor was already a really thick board, which we then put a nice vinyl on top of. David made this box, which I sanded down and then painted. I wonder if you can guess what it's for. Comment down below. Doing this did take precedence over the house for a while, and although it was frustrating because we wanted to get into the house, we also really wanted to have this trip. We were visiting friends in Italy and it was a big 50th birthday, so it was important to us that we try and make it there. We have progress. Every day.
Here we go. What's it called? A Van Gogh Keller Low. I bought this for my old T25 and I bought it the day before England was locked down. and it's never been out of the bag. I bought it second hand. I've got the receipt, I've got all the instructions, all the bits and pieces, but I've never had a chance to put it up. So that's what we're going to try and do today, see if it fits the old T4.
I am so glad we had to go and practice putting this up inside the warehouse before we went on our trip. Otherwise, we'd have felt rather silly in a campsite being watched by other people, because that's what they do. They watch you while you're putting your stuff out. So this is a good tip for anyone who gets one of these. Practice putting them up at home before you go out on the road. At this point, David headed back to work and we had just 2 weeks left until we were due to go on our trip, and I was picking him up from the airport, but there were still some things that needed to be done. But they were also things that hadn't yet arrived. So the seat covers, they arrived and I fitted those. Then the grommets arrived for putting the roof back in and I put that back in. And then the tinting. I actually did the window tinting on the van, never done it before. It's not 100% perfect, but I'm really pleased and it's still on there today. By under here, these cushions actually came off a sofa that Dave brought back from his mum's house when he went on his trip to the UK and back, and that's a sofa that his family had in the 1970s in Africa, so wonderful to have that with us. This is raised up and we have boxes that fit perfectly underneath there for storing everything in as we travel around our way. You can see just to the left of that red bag there, the vinyl, it's like a sticky vinyl covering we put on to make that look like wood without adding any extra weight to the van. That red bag actually holds the shades that you stick inside the windows at night so you can sleep in complete darkness. These then are the boxes that we picked up and I decorated. They are secured at the back, and then we've got the straps over there to stop the doors and drawers opening as we travel along. 2 more storage boxes there. The colours just luckily happened to match with what was available locally. And this was the box that we made. It acts as somewhere for Oti to stand on and put his head out the window, and also acts as the support for the end of the bed. This then is Oti's rug that he lies on, and his water bowl. This is quite clever because it's anti-slip and it's anti-drip, so he doesn't get water everywhere. And as you can see, the floor here we covered in a vinyl, which is really great. The ceiling we removed, we put insulation underneath, and then I covered this the blue in a fabric and put that back up. That was a job that I did when David was at work on the last trip away. This is where we put the bedding when we're travelling along. That's washed and put away in the house right now. And at the front here, you can see we put some seat covers on. Again, just cheap ones. Nothing expensive was done with this van. This was done as cheaply as we could, but they just make it look a lot better, that's for sure, than the old stained grey ones that were there. And I don't know if you can see down here in the dark. You can just, it's a bit dusty right now, but that is our cup holder that David made. So there you go. That was all being done over at the warehouse at our house while we were still over at the rental, so we were travelling between the two at this stage, in the van of course. For those of you that were watching and saw when the other van, the Peugeot, broke down back in March, at this stage we were still using the VW as our only vehicle. We didn't actually get the Peugeot back until early August. It's had a second-hand new for us engine fitted. Now then for the windows, and if you ever wondered how to get paint and stuff off door furniture, you boil it in water with a bit of vinegar. It comes up beautifully. Those of you that have been following us for a while will realise that this then is Sammy and his son, who came in to help us do this window. They did a brilliant job, as we expected, and it was really interesting to see, first of all, how you get this old window out. They are really well fitted, and it took these guys quite a while to remove it. This was timed for the 2 weeks that David was away at work. So we worked on the van while he was here, and while he was away, I had Sammy and his son come and do this. I know we have a few people following along who have also recently purchased properties in Spain or are doing something very similar, and other people who are thinking about it. So I just wanted to pass on some experience we've had with builders here in Spain. As with anywhere, you get a variety. You get the good and the bad. The good builders are really difficult to get hold of. They get booked up for months in advance. We didn't realise this to start with, and it took us a long time to find Sammy, and then when we did, he wasn't available for many months to do the roof, and then again getting him in to do other things, it's taken time, and he hasn't always been available. So that's a tip for those of you who are thinking of getting work done out here. Bear in mind you've got to book these guys and you'll have to wait. As with many of the things that we found in the house, we've decided to keep this beautiful old window. It might not be any use for us as a window anymore, but it is handmade and it is a piece of the history of the house. I'm hoping to use it in some way, maybe in the garden or in the yard. What would you do with it? Give me your ideas in the comments down below.
Aha, well done.
So then we had a hole, and we had to work out how the new second-hand refurbished window was going to fit into that gap. While this was going on, Otis was down below being visited by a friend and neighbour, one he particularly likes because she always turns up with a treat. Thank you. This then is how Sammy has built up the bottom of that window so that the ledge now sits just below the window itself. We can't find a local builder who will use natural materials. They're not interested in using lime. It basically just takes too long because you have to do a small bit, wait for it to go off, come back and do a bit more. That's why they all use concrete and yeso. Couldn't all be done from the inside. There were times when he had to go outside and up the ladder. That was all completed in one morning. They went away for lunch and came back later in the afternoon to finish off doing the plastering around the edge there. And sitting here looking at it now, it does look pretty good with a cat asleep in the sunshine in that window. We haven't fully decided which window we're going to tackle ourselves first yet, but we have 3 more windows that size that we bought second hand and 3 smaller ones, plus 3 patio doors and 2 large windows downstairs to be refurbished, and we will need to buy more doors and windows beside that, so a big job going forward. And now added to my list of things to do is to make some cushions for these windows for the cats, because they clearly like them. If we get a chance to visit this area in mid-March, come and see the almond blossom. It was absolutely stunning again this year. And now to late May, and time to head to Italy. Not quite in the manner expected. We had severe storm warnings and flood warnings in place, and I had to get out a little earlier than planned. So, this is me leaving. It's absolutely throwing it down. We're in the clouds up here, and there's a weather warning for severe heavy rain in the Oria area, which is close to where we're renting and where the house is. So I'm leaving early. It's 12:15 and I'm heading out now. Dave doesn't arrive in Alicante until 11 o'clock tonight. So there's the van behind me. Just stopped at Sierra Espuna Services. Otis really needed a pee. We've driven through quite a lot of rain on the way here. It was picking up in Albox as I left there. You can see the clouds there behind me. It's a bit clearer ahead, thankfully. Being many hours early for my flight, some of you may recognise where I'm driving into now. Thank you, Lillian and Chris from Tales from the Cave Side, who are now good friends of ours, and they looked after me for the afternoon and evening before I went to go and collect David from the airport. You can hear this, we're near Benicolo. Decided last night to drive a bit longer through the night, get the other side of Valencia because of the storm warnings for Alicante and that whole region. The storm, it's just following on behind us. They've got rain forecast here for 1 o'clock. It's now about 11:30 and the winds are picking up. But we're making really good time. We've only got a couple of hours before we reach Barcelona and find ourselves a campsite. We spent a very enjoyable evening in that campsite near Barcelona and then headed up to a service station not far from the motorway, ready to head to the port. We needed to avoid the ULEZ system, so we couldn't go in too early in the day. Thankfully, we managed to keep those storms behind us, and soon we're headed into the port of Barcelona, ready to get onto our ferry. It's always interesting being in ports. You meet some interesting people, and this was no exception. We chatted and met some really interesting families while waiting to get onto this ferry. Those who are interested, the distance from the rental up to Barcelona is just short of 750 kilometres. We were soon settled in and headed up to the top deck, which is where we could go with the dog. There's lots of space up there to walk around with him. As you can see, quite a beautiful ferry this is. It's a Grimaldi Lines one, as you saw from the sign there. Time for a snack, something to drink, and then a good night's sleep. And then in the morning, Otis started to make some friends with another dog that was also on board. Now, Otis didn't really get his sea legs. He wasn't that happy being on the ferry, but it turns out neither were the other dogs. We spoke to some other owners who felt exactly the same, that their animals weren't 100% happy with the movement of the ferry. But the ferry company were really obliging to people having pets, and he even got his own welcome pack with food and treats. Also provided special areas for the dog to go to the toilet, which was much better than them just going on the deck and cleaning it up off there. The ferry takes just over 20 hours from the port of Barcelona over to the port of Civitavecchia, just north of Rome. We arrived late at night and headed off on our adventure. We were heading to Abruzzo and we had two choices: go south to Rome, go around the city and take the main motorway, or go north and take a road across, which is what we did. And then we found a beautiful place to camp for the night on the app, and stayed in our van in a park where you can legally stay overnight as long as you don't get anything out, and then headed off that morning for Abruzzo. Initially it was a foggy start and we weren't sure what to expect. Our last time in Italy had been very different during August of 2020 when we moved across to Spain from Greece, but soon the sun cleared and wow, it is a beautiful country, Italy. To share everything about our holiday, it was a holiday. We stayed in some beautiful places. We met up with friends we hadn't seen for far too many years, had some nice drinks, some nice food. It was a 50th birthday party. We visited a vineyard and it was a wonderful holiday. There was a but, and actually it was nearly a reason we didn't go on the trip at all. David had to do a course, a very intensive 6-week course. Luckily he could do it online, so he started while we were on the holiday. He worked online for 8 hours doing the course while I went and explored and caught up with our friends. It was a real privilege to be invited to stay with our friends in their home, in the mountains and in the forests in Abruzzo. I'm not going to say exactly where it is, but it's a perfect place for them. And it was wonderful to see them settled into this wonderful life that they have created there. All too soon it was time for us to head back to Spain. And this time we took a slightly different route back, going down the main motorway and seeing again most amazing views across Italy. It really is a beautiful country to visit, and I hope that if you haven't, you get a chance to do so one day too. A couple of observations then that we made about our trip to Italy. The food, amazing, just as you'd expect, as was the wine. A little bit more expensive than Spain, but the white wine particularly was really good. Here in Spain we tend to drink red more often than white. The roads were not as well maintained and the driving just a little bit more crazy. We reached the coast and before long that sun was setting again as we headed towards the ferry for that long trip back across to Barcelona. Our return to Spain was a beautiful sunny one, but we'd been following the weather while we were away, and that storm that we left behind had continued for quite some time. There'd been flooding in some areas of Spain. Some people locally to where our house was had had problems with water coming in roofs. We had set up some cameras in the property while we were away so we could keep an eye on things, and given a key to a neighbour, and luckily we did not suffer any damage ourselves. It was soon time to disembark again. This was the weekend and we needed to get back home. David needed to be back at our place doing his course again for Monday morning. And while he worked on his course, I went and collected the cats from the kennels. Amusingly, Chewy was quite happy in his cat bed that we'd taken in there with him. I think he liked this kennel a little bit too much and maybe would have happily stayed a bit longer.
What is it, Mr. Chief?
So back to today, and since our last video we've made a few amendments to our living area upstairs. The room where we're having the kitchen, we've got our 2 Kadak camping cookers which we've connected each one to its own gas bottle so they can be used at the same time. One can be used like an oven while the other there can be boiling things or whatever. The cat, as you can see, is enjoying the boxes under there. They're storing stuff. Dave has also put in some white metal shelving for me so that we can have easy access to some of our equipment up here to make life a lot easier. We've also put a board underneath the fridge and freezer to make them level and so they don't rock on that uneven floor. And also the cat's feeding station is set up there as well. We've got a slow cooker. My next list of things to get, I'm hoping, is going to be an air fryer and a microwave. And I think then we'll be set up camping wise for the rest of our time until we build a kitchen eventually. That's it then for this week, guys. Thank you for joining us again. Next week you can look forward to learning about replacing beams in floors. In the meantime, I hope you have a good week, and if you're new here, don't forget to do all that clicking, subscribing and commenting stuff that you always do. Thank you, friend, and I'll see you on the next one.